And we're back for True Footy Podcast 17. Is that right?
I think so.
I've already forgotten. Yeah, 17 I've got written down, thankfully.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought we would have made it this far?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I'd back us in.
I guess 17 is not that much, actually. But when you consider how much work we actually put into each episode, it takes like 10 hours to upload it.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't all live near each other, it's a pretty good effort. I put up a post last week thanking everyone for helping us to get us to 4,000 views on our last podcast. We're up to over 6,000 now on the Derby, the greatest Derby gaff.
Yeah.
Which is pretty phenomenal. So I just, again, want to thank everyone who's gotten around that. That's more than double our personal best. So feeling pretty good right now.
It was a hot topic, the gaff incident. So I think it was always bound to draw interest. And yeah, it's fun to have these sorts of discussions on big events in the AFL.
Absolutely. So we've reached a part of the season where it's all coming together. All the calculators are getting out. Everyone's adding up what the different permutations are.
Melbourne can still miss finals.
Hey?
Melbourne can still miss finals if they lose by 151 points and Essendon or Geelong or something wins by 150 or something. I saw it somewhere, yeah. Oh. It's something ridiculous like that that's not going to happen. But mathematically, they can still be ninth.
Interesting. I didn't know that. But one team that pretty much is out of the finals is Port Adelaide, which was a shock because considering where they were a few weeks ago, I think they were 11-4 after 15 or 16 rounds, and they've lost 5 of the last 6, and now they sit in 9th and need a minor miracle to make it. I think they rely on Geelong losing to Gold Coast in Geelong, which is probably not going to happen.
They should have won that game against the Eagles, and it's going to cost them. It's going to cost them a spot in the finals. They went on a big recruitment drive last year. They got Jack Watts, they got Motlop, they got Rockcliffe. Who else? Lindsay Thomas,
Trengove, Mackenzie, and Lindsay Thomas were all drafted. And
I think you'd have to say they haven't made a difference this season. The big recruit. I think Rockcliffe is the only one that's really come off.
And even Rockcliffe's only really showed up in like 8 games this year.
Yeah.
He did have his injury troubles. I think he missed most of the pre-season with a groin injury, and then he came through via the forward line. So he's kind of... He's struggled to get momentum, but I've had him in my dream team most of this year. He's had some very good games.
He has. That's what I mean. He has had good games, but he's also had games where he's done like nothing.
Looking back, I think that it was probably unwise for them to risk so much on players who historically were super consistent, and it's probably unwise to presume that they could bring super inconsistent players to the club and turn them into consistent players. So it hasn't really come off, but I mean it's only the first year. Most of the guys are still pretty young, apart from Thomas. So it could still pay off long term, but you'd have to say, as of now, it hasn't.
Definitely not.
They've dropped 4 spots. Like, if you accept that they're probably going to finish 9th, they were 5th last year and were unlucky to get knocked out in the first week. But they've still dropped 4 spots, and you have to wonder why. I feel like a lot of it's just all come and done in the last few weeks. I think if you isolate the players' form, they're probably happy somewhat with Watts. I don't think Motlop's going too bad. And Rockcliffe, apart from his injury troubles, has been all right. But I guess it comes down to whether... I mean, do you think they paid a lot for these players? Because, I mean, if you look at them, Jack Watts cost them a second rounder. Motlop cost them just a big contract. He was a free agent. And Rockcliffe immediately would have been a big contract as well. So put that together, they're probably paying 1.2 to 1.3 mil for those players.
Yeah.
So I guess they are paying a lot of salary cap, but in terms of moving pieces, they haven't actually traded away their draft position too badly. And I think they've got all their draft picks this year. So there's a lot to be said for them having a very low risk, high reward approach last year. But I think the players, like, I don't think you'll find any Port supporter or board member who will say that they haven't underachieved this year.
Definitely underachieved.
Yeah,
like even Pepper's been dropped in the past couple of weeks because he hasn't been able to find form. So
they were talked up by a few people as being a premiership fantasy before the season began. think when the season, after a few rounds, everyone realised that wasn't going to be the case. But again, it's a long-term review process. It's not a 1-year review process. So you can't say whether it's an ultimate failure or a good move yet. But yeah, as of right now, it's definitely not a good move. And again, we'll see the long-term effects. Are these guys on long contracts? Is it going to affect their ability to keep good young players?
Because Polak might be gone. That's
well, that's going to free up probably some contract space, but he's a big player to lose. I'd argue he's a better loss than any of the players that came in.
Yeah, in terms of for that particular team, certainly.
They lost Impey, who was a handy player for them. We won't dress it up. He wasn't amazing, but
he's gone well at Hawthorn, actually, somewhat well.
Yeah, he's going all right at Hawks.
I think that's the case of Hawthorn just knowing how to use a player's strengths, and he's got the ability to play in their style. So I think he's one of those players that if he played anywhere else, he probably wouldn't be playing as well as he is now. Yeah. I think there's also a lot to be said for when a team brings in so many players that they want in their best 22 at once, it causes a little bit of a speed hump almost. I think of West Coast, obviously, because I'm a fan. But when we went hard after Jack Redden and Lewis Jetta, they both struggled so hard in the opening year or two to play in our system. And I mean, I guess Rockcliffe and Motloff and Watts aren't doing too bad a job, but I wonder if there's a bit to be said for just having so many new best 22 players that it kind of breaks up their momentum a little bit. And
they've even had some young guys debut this year and stuff as well. So it's a bit of a turnover they've had compared to that team last year that came fifth, really, if you think about it.
Powell Pepper's probably dropped off a little bit this year as well. It sounds like they haven't had a real good year together. I mean, he had his off-field issue, even though I don't think anything really was there.
Came of it.
Nothing really came of it. But I think I get the impression that there's a little bit of I think he's a little bit disgruntled from what you read online. And he's probably a player they probably want to get back into his form, because last year he was actually playing to a level that influenced whether they were winning or not. You know what I mean? He was a very good first-year player. Do you think they're underachieving for the talent they have?
Definitely. Robbie Gray, when he's on songs, was back a few years ago in that Fife-type conversation with Fife, Dusty Danger. He was in that convo 3-4 years ago.
He's been very good in some games again this year. I don't think they are underachieving. I think that I actually don't rate their list as high as some other lists. I think Wines is good. I think Robbie Gray is pretty good.
Wingard.
Wingard's dropped off a lot. I mean, apart from his first couple of years, he hasn't actually offered a whole heap.
Ryder, Dixon.
I mean, personally, I think if you break it down line by line, there should be. I think they're on par with some of the teams that are better than them, which is strange in terms of talent. Like you got Wines, to a lesser extent, Powell Pepper. Now Rockcliffe's in there. Boak. I know he plays a bit of forward line now. Ebert. I think there is enough to get by. And when you compare that to a midfield of West Coast, I think it stacks up better. And on the back line, they've got Jonas and Homsch and the key position.
Burn Jones, Pittard, they're both half-backers.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of inconsistent players.
They're a tough one to get a read on. They are. I mean, you do get the feeling if everything came right, they could be good. But right now, I think their ladder position is only what they deserve to be. I don't think they deserve to be any higher.
They remind me a bit of the Bulldogs, actually, except the Bulldogs actually won a flag. But that young Port team back in 2014, when they were all in that youthful group where they made a prelim and
they nearly pinched a grand final spot. Yeah,
they look like they were going to be the team of the future. Not unlike the Bulldogs when they won, but both teams have since petered off considerably. So you could draw that comparison, I suppose.
Where do you compare them to Adelaide?
Port against Adelaide. Yeah. If Adelaide were healthy, Adelaide's better list, definitely. But Adelaide's had a lot of health issues for sure this year.
That's true. Adelaide definitely have a very strong list talent-wise. But again, I personally think I would say they're slightly underachieving. I think there's better teams higher than them that aren't as talented on paper. For instance, Hawthorn, in my opinion.
Yeah, even start of the year, I didn't peg Hawthorn as But
we know you did that bet.
Yeah, obviously. But Clarkson's bloody... All this talk about Ross Lyon's contract, but he got back in 2015. People question it now. Clarko's one guy that you wouldn't question getting that sort of a contract.
No, and speaking of people getting that sort of a contract, today it was announced that Chris Scott's got a 5-year contract. Now, I think this is a pretty ballsy move from Geelong. Obviously, they're very happy with Chris Scott, but 5 years, that's as big as you can get for a coach. What do you guys think of 5 years for Chris Scott?
Bit big, especially considering Geelong's a team that's underperformed.
Yep.
Like, look at the talent they've got. They've got their top end talent's probably better than any other team in the AFL, and they barely made finals this year. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of half agree, half disagree. Scott's had a wonderful record since he's been at Geelong. He won a premiership in his first year.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a read on whether or not.
Is that hard work done by other people?
They say that first premiership was won for him by the players. He didn't need to coach him. That's probably a little bit disrespectful. You know, a bad coach could have a bad effect on a team. So he's obviously not a bad coach. This year, I actually think their list is just so top heavy.
Yeah.
And I think they haven't coped well with injuries. So
the depth is definitely an issue there. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I guess the question is for Geelong, like, do they have faith that someone could come in to do better? I'm guessing they don't have confidence in that.
I don't think Ablett's ever going to be able to put together he's never going to be able to put together a 20-game season.
Right.
So that's a problem for them. I think Joel Selwood's actually dropped off compared to where he was a few years ago. Still a great player, great leader.
Even Danger's dropped off a bit, I'd say.
Danger, I think, has had a little bit of an off year. We know how amazing he can be on his day. He can be the best player in the AFL, but this year I think he's dropped off a little bit. So it's interesting that bringing all those players into the same midfield hasn't really... It's more had all of them operating at 80% rather than all of them operating at 100%. Is there room for all of them in one midfield? They're also trying to develop Mitch Duncan, Cam Guthrie,
Tim Kelly.
I mean, you could argue strongly that Tim Kelly has been their best midfielder this year. And...
Even Menegola.
Yeah, Menegola. Is there room for everyone at Geelong?
It kind of begs the question there, from a list management perspective, do they take this opportunity with Tim Kelly to try and offload him for a player that they need
value for him?
Forward?
Yeah, someone to just shore up the depth a bit, because they do have... I think they've played like the most of their draftees over the last year or two, Geelong. They are blooding the youth, and I don't think their youth is as good as the other teams.
I think that with the Tim Kelly thing, that they'd be eyeing off, Sean Darcy, for example. They would be eyeing him off, I reckon, because he's a Geelong boy. Their ruck positions, Zach Smith's good, but he could be their ruckman for the next 10 years easy if they got him. I don't want, as a Freo fan, I don't want to give him up for Kelly, but that's something I could see Geelong pushing hard for if Kelly really pushes to come home.
I think, Geelong will be trying to keep Kelly 100%, but... if he really wants to come home, there's not much they can do about it, considering he'll be out of contract at the end of next year. So it's probably actually in Geelong's best interest to try and force a trade this year if he's going to leave.
Yeah, I agree, because you could get a premium price for him.
Look what happened with Cam McCarthy. They were asking 2 first-rounders before he had his year-long sabbatical, and then they only got a second-rounder for him because he had a year-long sabbatical. And
I actually don't think Freo were that far off accepting that offer either.
Freo probably were very close.
Yeah.
I think Freo were the ones pushing that, but GWS were just putting their foot down saying we're not caving to guys saying they want to go home.
Yeah.
Cam McCarthy is the one they decided to make a stand on.
Yeah.
GWS is one of the few teams that could make that stance and they don't care because they have such an excess of talent.
It's just crazy. I mean, we're hearing about Will Setterfield, who was, I think, a pick 5, was he?
Correct.
Wanting to go home, and by all accounts, they just don't really care that much because they got so much talent in every position. If they don't win a premiership with their side, it's an underachievement, in my opinion.
Monumental.
The amount of talent they have is just absolutely crazy, GWS.
They've lost more talent than Carlton, Gold Coast, Freo and St Kilda have developed in the past 5 years, I'd say.
Yeah. You could form another football club with all the players that have let go, and that football club would still be a good team.
Except Carlton.
Well, I mean, imagine Carlton, but they also had
Adam
Treloar, Dom Tyson,
Yep.
McCarthy, like all these guys.
There's more.
There's tons. Ahern.
Yeah.
Marchbank.
He's already at Carlton though.
Yeah.
No, but I know what you're saying.
Generally,
there is a lot of talent.
But they've played a lot of talent.
Nathan Wilson.
Yeah.
He was one that hurt them, I think. Nathan Wilson.
Especially with Zach Williams.
Yeah, so Zach Williams went down. Heath Shaw's not quite the player he used to be. He's getting on a bit, Heath Shaw. I think they probably would take that back if they could. Again, that's another one though with Wilson forcing the trade through. I think he was very keen to come back.
Yeah, he's in that young family situation, wants relatives around him to help with the kids sort of thing, which is understandable.
Wants to get back to Rockingham.
He's Mandurah, ain't he?
He just seems like the sort of guy that would hang out at Rockingham.
Yeah, mate, he loves the Rockingham shops.
Yeah. On his scooter, on his Razor.
Getting his fresh Nike TNs.
Yeah.
So, arguably the biggest story coming out of the second last round is Melbourne have made the finals for the first time in 12 years. Pretty awesome game. Did you guys watch the Eagles-Melbourne game?
No. I was at Roddo. Honestly, I was at Roddo.
That's cool. I'll just talk about it.
I was doing better things.
No, it was actually one of the better games for the year. I have to say, as I sat up there sulking, saying that it was a shit game the whole time, it was a really good game. But huge result for Melbourne fans. Mm-hmm. Like 12 years of torment, finally at an end. I remember it started around... What was the first year they were really bad? In 2007, they took Kale Morton, and they had pick 4, so that must have been the start of the end, so to speak. But they must feel good. Like, how long did Carlton go without making finals? They made the finals in 2009 even.
They've jagged a couple of finals.
I think they made the
7 years or 8 years or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'd say 8 or 9 years. But yeah, Melbourne 12, so that is fantastic for them. It's hard to argue with their talent, isn't it? I think they're a scary proposition. They've got a lot of young players in that right age bracket.
Yeah.
And they're also some of their best players, like Clayton Oliver, Angus Brayshaw, Petrarca, Jesse Hogan's 23.
No, very
He's
good
out,
team.
But yeah.
The list goes on.
Very good team. I've put up a video earlier in the year how I said Melbourne would make finals. So very happy with that. But yeah, in that video, you can go. They got so much talent. It's really it's not the talent that's going to get them. It's, I don't know, maybe past experiences, culture, things like that will stop them doing anything. But
inexperience, maybe.
It seems like this group has really shaken that tag. I think they got really good leaders now. I think Jack Viney, I think Nathan Jones, they're really good leaders, and they don't sort of seem like the sort of guys that would sort of let, I don't know, past experiences or past failures affect the playing group. They're both real just like bullet a gate sort of guys. Angus Brayshaw, I think you can argue, has probably been in the top 20 or 30 players this season. He's put together a really good year. Clayton Oliver, amazing. The list goes on with them about how many good players. Both the McDonald brothers, really good.
Not just the players. I think it all started with Paul Roos when he came in and sort of cleaned house a bit. I mean,
Paul Roos gets a lot of credit, but Simon Goodwin, no one ever speaks about him as well.
And the recruiters, you have to say, they've absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting game being at the game at Optus Stadium on Sunday. It was a game where both teams were trying to play on their own terms, but very separate ways.
Yeah.
With Gawn in the ruck and the contested beasts in the midfield that Melbourne have, it was a game where every time the ball would go to a centre bounce, Melbourne would take it away, and just the way they could generate inside 50s from the centre bounces was immense. So the only way the Eagles could combat that was just
Spread wide.
Suppress the original clearance, make sure that doesn't become a goal. But then where the Eagles would get on top was when they would transition around the ground and use the width of the ground and the outside. I guess it was a battle versus inside versus outside, who could dominate for longer. And in the end, Melbourne were just too tough and were by far the better team on the day. Yeah. And it's just really evident to me how tough and skilled their team is. There's a lot of big boys in that team.
Is there?
So I've heard. There's a lot of big-bodied, uncompromising midfielders in that team, isn't there? If you look
big toe ball,
uncompromising.
Yeah, honestly, look at that. Look.
Won't take no for an answer.
Yeah, let's not go there. Viney, Oliver, Brayshaw, Jones, like that midfield, and then the list goes on. They just battered the Eagles, and they're backing up with skill. Petrarca's another real thick boy.
Yeah.
But he also has skill.
That's probably a good way to play the Eagles. If I was coming up against the Eagles, and especially without Gaff and Nat Nui, I'd be trying to play a real contested, tight sort of game. And I think, Melbourne, that's probably Melbourne's strength as well. So I think West Coast probably don't match up great to Melbourne.
I agree.
And I think West Coast would be better off playing a Geelong or someone like that than Melbourne.
I agree. It's evident as well that the fact that Melbourne have won in Perth twice in a row now, it means we just can't play them that well. And I think you're right. It's because aside from both those games, we didn't have Nick Nat Nui, so Max Gawn's obviously got a massive ruck advantage, and the midfield is also very strong. So it was very hard for the Eagles to really try and crop the advantage that Melbourne had, and the only way they could do it was using the ball on the outside. And I think the Eagles actually played really well. As now that in the cold light of day that I've calmed down from the game, I think the Eagles put up a really good fight, and Melbourne were just very, very good.
Well, Eagles did well. There was almost 30 points to nothing at one stage. I think 27. So they did well to fight back, and I think they got ahead, did they, briefly?
Yeah, they did. The slow starts have burned the Eagles this year.
Yeah, so, I mean, respect to Melbourne for fighting it out. I think when I checked my phone and saw the score, I thought they were just going to wither away a bit, and I thought Eagles would run over the top of them. But and that's going to do them a world of good as well. I know Eagles have been weakened, so we can't really look past that. But they only just need a win like that against a good quality side, and that's going to just do wonders for their improvement. I wouldn't be surprised if they upset a few people in finals.
Yeah, it could be the win that sort of galvanises a young group, especially on the road. Like they say, when teams travel away, you can obviously bond a lot more because you're spending time with each other.
And there's talk of Melbourne missing the finals going into that game.
They had to fight. They had to fight to get there.
They did, and obviously last year they kind of choked, and this was their way of kind of getting revenge on the Eagles almost because they beat them in Perth to qualify. And I think that's a huge step for them in their development. Whether or not they're a contender this year, I'd probably say not. I think they're going to...
couple too many injuries.
I don't think they can win it from 6th or 7th.
No, I'd probably agree with you there.
Yeah,
I think they can maybe upset one or two teams, but the fact of you can't say they would upset 4 teams in a row, would you?
No. Nobody would have said that about the Bulldogs, but I agree. What I will say though is I think they're gearing up for a very scary premiership tilt, and I think it might start as early as next year. Especially if they can land someone like an Andrew Gaff, who they probably haven't really been linked to. But if they can recruit, keep recruiting, good players like they seem to.
I don't think they really need to go after anyone. To be honest, I think they're pretty sorted. I think so long as they just really focus on drafting well, and they can just keep those young guys coming through, I think they could have some sustained success. But I mean, it's a really. The teams just swing these days as to what style of game works, who's in form. So I mean, that's actually a big call for you to say that you think they could be a good side for a while.
Based on what I saw close up, I think just the attributes they have, the combination of toughness, the contested ability, and the skill level was immense. And I think they're spread well in terms of key position and midfielders in terms of talent. And as I said, the age bracket thing, I think they're going to have a prolonged run at it as long as they can keep players, which I think they will.
Spread well for young guys.
Yeah, well, I've seen that video, but...
All Yeah,
Goodbye,
but it's
potential
hard
brand
not
deal.
to feel. It's hard not to feel happy for them. I've got.
It was hard on Sunday for me.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. I don't dislike them. I don't love them either. But it's good to see. It is good to see teams that get belted for a long time, and they're in a dark hole. They were in a very dark hole, much like yourself, Jesse, several times. But no, they've really come out of it, and you have to feel happy for them and happy for their supporters. I wonder if it'll be like a bit of a Richmond thing where their membership base just goes from like 35,000 to like 100,000. Like just yeah.
I'm surprised they don't have more like. They're not a bigger club considering they're one of the oldest ones, and they're like just generally Melbourne. You know what I mean?
They've
I
been
guess
pretty.
the
They
success,
haven't had much success even since like Day Dot, have they?
No, but I mean comparatively to the other MCG teams, for some reason all the MCG teams are like big clubs.
Yeah.
And Melbourne aren't. It's an interesting one.
I think that's the success.
Yeah.
I reckon if they do well, I think you'll see a lot of fans coming in.
Yeah, even in the waffle, the Perth Demons are in a similar predicament, named after the whole place.
Yeah, must be a devil thing.
They might.
Yeah.
That's what they get for associating with the devil, mate.
Don't kick Perth Demons while we're down. It's a sad.
I'm an East Freo man.
It's been a bad season.
It's a hard life.
For Perth.
It's been a good season in the win-loss ratio, but it's heartbreaking to miss the finals like they're about to.
Yeah, but I think they've turned a corner. People can see that.
For all the
on the horizon.
They're all the non-West Australian fans listening to this. Perth Demons are perennially the Carlton of the waffle. In fact, I think it's been 2 decades since they made finals, and we're on the verge of qualifying 3 weeks ago. Lost after the siren and play the undefeated Subiaco this week, and even if they win, they're not guaranteed to go into the finals. So.
Imagine if they won though, and they got finals. That would be
huge. I think it's up in Leederville, so Subiaco's home game. Okay. Subiaco, before we get into a real tangent, is arguably the greatest waffle team of all time this year, about to surely complete an undefeated season. So.
Including finals.
Yeah, probably. Let's face it. Yeah. But moving on, I also wanted to bring up some comments David King made during the week back on the Melbourne issue. I want to read a quote to you boys, and I want to see what you think about it. David King said that if you have a player like Jesse Hogan, who has kicked 2 goals a game for the best part of 4 years, and you offered pick 6 or 7 for Fremantle, would you look at it? So he's coming up with this idea that Melbourne should perhaps get on the front foot and trade Jesse Hogan for pick 6 or 7 to someone like Fremantle. I presume on the basis that he thinks that he might leave in the future, so you have to sell high. Does anyone else think that's a bit ridiculous?
From a Melbourne perspective, certainly, but...
From a Fremantle perspective, it's fine.
Yeah. From a Freo perspective, I'll throw in another first rounder.
That's part of the point, is it? Yeah. He's arguing that you should sell high while Hogan is contracted. Yeah. I wouldn't say selling Hogan for pick 6 is selling high. Do you think? I think that's probably about market value. He's kicked nearly 50 goals this year. His season's over, but he kicked 47 goals in 20 games this year.
They'd be crazy to let him go.
He's 23 years old.
They'd be crazy.
Freo should throw a godfather offer almost, so I think.
If you were Fremantle, what would you offer? What do you think would get the deal done, and would you offer it, Busher?
I'd offer 2 firsts, which, depending on how they feel about Hogan going into finals and if they look good without him and all that sort of stuff.
Pick 2 firsts, just to clarify, would be pick 6 this year, which is likely your first pick, and it would, let's say, top 10 next year. Yeah. So they're 2 fairly good picks, rather than Richmond offering 2 first would be pick 18.
Because the thing is, that pick 6, we're just going to take like one of the King brothers or something who are potentially going to be good key forwards. We know Hogan's a gun key forward, which is what Freo needs.
I don't think it's a sure thing, man. I think Fremantle will take the best available. I think if that's a midfielder, we'll take them.
I think so too.
We don't need more. We need tall, bloody.
People have been saying this to Fremantle for the last 5 years, and we always take who we think the best player is.
I think you might take a King brother if he's there, but there's talk that Gold Coast with their 2 picks will take 2 King brothers. So.
Which would be... We did talk about that briefly in the Facebook chat the other week. I think it'd be smart for Gold Coast because you'd be more likely to keep them because they'd have each other rather than 2 random kids that probably will both get homesick and few years, especially in the shambles that is Gold Coast.
Speaking of the draft, I want to, on record, make a big call that Isaac Rankine, is it Rankine?
Rankin.
Is going to be, is going to be a future superstar of the AFL.
Interesting.
I've watched a lot of highlights this year, and he has seriously impressed me. I know everyone's talking up Lukosius as the number one, but if you were someone like Richmond, or I don't know, someone who's already got a key forward, I'd be 100% going hard for Rankine.
In what sense?
Well, in that I'd kick him.
In two senses. Interesting. Rankin is somewhat like a Chad Wingard type. Like, he could go either way, and Wingard could still go either way. I could still see Wingard becoming one of the best players in the competition. Like, if he gets his shit together. The talk with Isaac Rankin is, if I'm even saying that right, it could be Rankin. I don't know. I've never actually. I think it's Rankin. I'm going to say Rankin.
Sounds better.
I think he's actually got some like go home issues, so that's why he's not being talked about going like top 5. I think he might slow down. So
I'd love to pick him up.
Yeah,
at Fremantle with pick 7 or something.
Spectacular player.
Or whatever we end up with. I mean, as a Freo fan, it's a bit annoying with all these free agency moves and talk of priority picks. I think it's going to push our first pick back maybe 3 or 4 spots.
Yeah.
Speaking of compensation, what do you think is a fair amount for Andrew Gaff if he goes, and do you think he will go, both of you guys?
I think he's going to go.
Yep.
Because I think he could have signed by now. I don't really understand why he wouldn't have signed by now.
Yep.
And I think he might still be in Melbourne.
Yep.
Like physically still in Melbourne at the time. Yeah. And I understand that. That's cool. I think, his dad's crook. So, well, I mean, put it this way. If his dad's health wasn't a reason for him to stay, and it's a good reason, if that wasn't a reason for him to go home, it surely would add to the reasons that he might have already been considering.
Yeah.
It is odd to me that he would choose North Melbourne. If the rumours are true about him getting 1.2 mil, then...
I mean, he doesn't seem like the sort of guy that would chase money at all. But at the same time, an extra $400,000 a year is a lot of money.
These players do have to maximise their revenue while they're at this age. I mean, Gaff seems like he could probably work as a professional after his footy career. He seems switched on, but still. Yeah,
complete speculation, but I mean, who knows what's happening with his dad as well, especially if he's got to pay lots of medical bills and things like this.
Yeah, that is a good one. I certainly wouldn't begrudge him if that's his motivation.
Yeah. So you think he's gone?
I think he's gone.
Yeah, I'd lean towards the same at this stage. Like,
if you were Gaff, who would you go to? Would you go to North, highest bidder, or would you go to?
It just depends who's offering.
Carlton or...
Sure as hell wouldn't go to Carlton.
Well, yeah, so you...
No disrespect to them, but like, why... Gaff's 26, he's been playing in a team that's been pushing up the ladder for 8 years.
Yeah.
Why would you go to a team that is going to spend another 4 years in trying to make finals? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
Wouldn't do that for any amount of money.
Yeah.
I think North, actually, because if they get him and Polek, who's also been noised around...
Sounds like Polek will probably be there as well.
That's a lethal team. Like, their midfield is gold standards. There are Cunnington, Zabel, Higgins.
It gives them the outside.
Polek and Gaff on the wings. Ben Brown is your key forward.
Yeah.
Robbie Tarrant, key back. Even Simpkin, LDU. They've got some...
Not a bad little team, considering we were really going in hard on their talent at the start of the year.
Yeah.
And they've proved us wrong, so good on them.
Credit to them, yeah.
I was the first to roast them, and now I've just given them some
credit. We all gave North and Collingwood huge roasts at the start of the year, and good on them, yeah.
I think I did say their best 22 was better than Gold Coast, Brisbane, Carlton.
Yeah.
I expected them to go down the route of just saying, hey, let's just go hard at a rebuild. And they didn't.
Yeah.
They were too stubborn.
Probably thought they'd be similar to a Fremantle sort of in ladder position, personally.
They're going to finish, 11th, 10th or 11th. So, it's still not a great spot. But no, I'm a big believer in if you're going to
10th, yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to rebuild, I think try and do it in a team that's competitive.
Yeah,
I don't think it's ideal for players learning how to play the football learning how to play football.
Getting flogged.
In a team's getting flogged.
Like Fremantle at the minute.
Do you think he's gone?
Yes.
Okay.
If you had asked me a few weeks ago, I said to you guys both a number of times I would be shocked if he left. But I just don't see why he wouldn't have re-signed. That's the major thing.
It would have been a galvanising thing after everything that happened.
Exactly.
Would have galvanised.
I thought it probably would have been done by now. He's not bringing any ease to the Eagles or himself by just delaying signing. He's just created more speculation.
Yeah.
So I think if he was going to stay, he probably would have.
He's probably waiting for the Eagles season to wrap up, maybe, to announce he's going, assuming he's going.
That's what I think. If he's staying, there's no reason to do that.
Exactly.
If he's getting offered 1.2 million, I'd be amazed if the Eagles can match that. Which means with the best we get from him is pick 17.
Even if
they could throw out an offer there and say you're leaving, we're going to offer you 1.2.
Maybe
with the hope that he doesn't stay
it or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially if Lycett goes.
The benefit of that is obviously forcing a trade, in which case we'd get a lot more for him.
Yeah.
We'd probably get like pick 10 and maybe better. Like pick 10 and something else you'd hope, probably. I think that's fair. And then as opposed to just like a late teens pick was what we'll get from him if he leaves as a free agent.
So about 10, you think?
What do I think he should be traded for? No, I would say pick 10 as a starting point. I reckon 2 firsts. So North's first this year. Yeah, I think he's like an A- midfielder, 26 years old, going to be like offered like $1 million a year. I mean, you might say that he's not quite worth it. That's fair, but two medium firsts. You know what I mean? Like North pick 10 this year, pick 10 next year. I think that's about right. Yeah. Considering what O'Meara and I know we have differing views on Tom Mitchell, but I mean O'Meara and Tom Mitchell at the time, they weren't worth that kind of value.
But O'Meara is probably different in that everyone knows that his best is like
prodigious.
Yeah,
but he hadn't really proven that at the time.
No, he hadn't proven it. But I think Hawks were probably hopeful and still are hopeful that they can bring that out of him.
He's quietly had a good year this year, Jager.
He's been okay. I don't think he's been exceptional.
Certainly not exceptional, but he's been their second best midfielder.
It's more important for him to just get through the year without any injuries, isn't it? And then he can
confidence.
really try and load himself up to have a big couple of seasons.
Couple of nights, yeah. Speaking of high-profile moves, though, one thing we didn't talk about in the last couple of podcasts is Tom Lynch obviously has decided to move back to Melbourne. Just feel a little short here. Oh yeah, it's better.
Yeah, unfortunately for Gold Coast, it really sucks. And he's their captain, arguably their best player, and they're going to lose him, and it's going to hurt them. And it sounds like from reports today he'll be going to Richmond. I mean, it makes Richmond more scary as well. It's just an all-round not a great move for anyone that's not a Richmond fan.
Do you think as captain it's a bit of a not low move, but do you think any less of him for wanting to leave?
Not really. He's been there for what, 7 years?
8
years.
Yeah, he's done his time.
Yeah, he's done his time in the prison, and now he's done his time.
And the team hasn't improved, and that's got to be on them. You know, that's a reflection of them.
If he stays, he's not going to win a premiership. He's not going to do anything really. So, as bad as it is for Gold Coast, it's just what's going to happen when you're bad every year.
Yeah,
it's the way the cookie crumbles.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate for them, and it's a huge stumbling block in their rebuild because now they're just going to get. They're going to get pick 3 probably as free agency. They could match the offer with Richmond, assuming Richmond offers him a contract. Gold Coast are certainly going to be able to match it financially. Yeah. So it's a choice of whether they choose to match it because they'll get less in a trade than if they let him go in free agency. You know, Richmond are going to offer him pick 18 this year, pick 18 next year. That's the best they can offer.
Yeah.
Whereas they're going to get pick 3 with Tom Lynch leaving.
Just on compo, yeah.
Yeah. Which is, it's just like...
It kind of exploits that the system isn't quite right, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, when it's de-incentivising matching the contract offer, it's a bit weird.
It's de-incentivising matching the offer, and it's also making the competition less equal. So it's pretty much working exactly against what it was brought in for.
I do have a video on our channel that you should check out where I blast free agency, but I really think this is a great example of how free agency would be. It would be better if Richmond were forced to trade, because they don't actually have to give anything up.
Yeah.
We don't need free agency.
I saw a weird idea today where it was like they pay a transfer fee, but then if Richmond pay that transfer fee, that amount comes out of their cap and gets added to Gold Coast.
Are you talking about like a hypothetical solution?
Yeah, this was like
that's
radical.
not actually happening.
It's not happening. This was like some random person's idea.
Yeah.
Like it certainly would need tweaking, that idea, but something like that could.
Yeah, something like that could work.
Like a cap penalty in these situations, maybe.
Also, I don't mind the idea of you can't move to maybe a top 4 or a top 8 club in free agency.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfair.
It's
That's the problem with it.
It's profited top teams too often.
The problem is that is unfair. But if they're going to keep free agency, they need to do something like this, because it's just going to end up... We'll probably have 5 superpower teams and other teams just struggle.
Yeah. I mean... Yeah, as I said, like teams keep... the top teams can benefit by just offering like no trade compensation to someone like Gold Coast and getting the player basically for free.
Yeah.
It definitely has not panned out the way I'm sure the AFL wanted it to. The thing about I like the suggestion where a top 4 or top 2 team can't like sign a free agent unless they've lost a player themselves,
or they cap the amount of money they can offer players. The top.
Yeah, that's not a bad one either.
Cap the amount of money they can offer.
Maximum is 700k or something.
Yeah. That number would have to obviously change all the time.
Yeah.
As salary caps change.
Well, that's pretty easy to manage. Like if the salary cap goes up a couple of percent, that figure goes up a couple of percent.
Yeah.
It goes down, vice versa.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I mean, the AFL are lucky that GWS have gone as well as they have. So if they were going badly, we'd have the same problem with them. Everyone would be wanting out, and the AFL would have screwed itself by introducing 2 teams.
Yeah, they gave a lot more, I reckon, to GWS than they gave to Gold Coast, admittedly.
Luckily, GWS have done well with it.
Yeah.
So they're going to retain a lot more players than Gold Coast. But it's really hard to see how they're going to get better. Unfortunately.
It is, yeah. I noticed that, I'm sure you all heard that a bunch of Gold Coast players understandably sort of had a crack at Tom Lynch for his lack of loyalty. I think Touk Miller, Braden Fiorini come to mind. Stephen May?
Yeah.
Did he? Oh, that's good. I actually didn't know that. That's good because they're a little bit worried about him leaving too, aren't they? And Lockie Weller was the other one.
Yeah.
Did you guys think that was a bit ironic?
Bit silly from Lockie, not going to lie.
Yeah. I think apparently... some of the when he announced he was going to leave,
Fremantle? Are you talking about Lockie Weller or Tom Lynch?
No, talking about Tom Lynch. Some of the players started to clap, and Stephen May kind of like after he did a big speech, and Stephen May pretty much stood up and was like, "Why are we clapping? This guy's leaving the football club." So
a clap's a bit much.
Yeah.
Kind of speaks to the culture, isn't it? It's like almost like, we understand how shit it is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Good for you, standing up against shitty old Gold Coast.
I mean, we don't really know the circumstances.
I do think Tom Lynch deserves to go to play for a team. Like, he is one of the best key forwards in the game. Like, top 3, 4.
It was always going to be a bit messy with him because he's captain and because he's their best player.
This is a bigger issue, but I'm still sceptical why Gold Coast and GWS exist, really. Like why?
Yeah.
Realistically. We didn't really need those 2 teams.
The AFL always want to expand into more markets, make the game more profitable.
Look how popular it is in Gold Coast, though.
Yeah, and GWS.
They could care less.
Yeah.
People in New South Wales and Queensland could generally care less about footy.
I think GWS have like over 20,000 members though.
That's mostly people in Canberra.
Yeah.
Most of their support's from Canberra.
Do you reckon a majority of their membership is from Canberra? I don't know about that.
It's an educated guess. It's a guess, but I know they're a lot more popular in Canberra than they are in Western Sydney.
If you've gone for a team, if a team sort of was introduced and they were from the exact place I live, I still wouldn't switch from Fremantle to that new team. Or I think everyone that's going to like AFL, I mean, it's really hard, I think, to introduce AFL into a community and then to just expect that community to all just flock to the game.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at Sydney. The Sydney Swans are a great example of a team that had prolonged success. They were obviously a very good team.
You don't need two teams in New South Wales though. There's one team provides it. Everyone in New South Wales would go for Sydney, but then GWS came in. They're just like.
I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to expand the game.
I don't think, but they could have picked, places that aren't rugby centric and pumped this much money into them.
They're trying to compete with rugby for the sake of the league. They're trying to. I mean, it's not just because they're selfish that they want to make money. It's good for the league if the league is healthier and is the prime sport. If the Australian rules get stronger as a sport, more kids will want to play. The talent will get better as well.
But you could do that with 16 teams, so I think. If you wanted to go into those New South Wales, Queensland markets, pump up Brisbane and Sydney rather than bring in teams to diminish their membership. And
Brisbane and Sydney at the time didn't really need as much help. Brisbane do now. Yeah. Sydney are pretty much decent on their own, other than, being handed Isaac Heaney and Callum Mills.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't mind it personally. Like it's only a second team. It's not like they're trying too hard. It's just they've butchered it. I think if GWS continue the way they're going, they're probably going to be another Sydney Swans. I think they'll eventually be able to stand on their own. It's Queensland that's been the real trouble, and I think it's because the teams are no good.
Which is the problem because Gold Coast just hasn't done any. Even the Gary Ablett experiment failed dismally. I'd say people in Queensland didn't give a shit when they had Gary bloody Ablett. What makes you think they're going to give a shit about a bunch of 18-year-old kids no one's heard of?
Yeah, I'm sure the AFL didn't plan for it to go this badly though.
Yeah, no one would have planned for it.
Ideally, the team would have been competitive, played a few finals by now. I think most people would have thought Gold Coast would have won a premiership by now, back in 2011.
Yeah, I thought that would...
They were tipped to be a juggernaut, which was obviously misplaced considering how long it actually takes to build a good team, but... Yeah.
And they've bled talent to a certain extent.
Yeah, well, they've turned over most of the list that they
started with,
haven't they?
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Sounded very Scottish. Definitely.
Moving on.
All right, boys. There's probably one last thing I want to talk about, and that's just the round in general. There's one round to go in the AFL. So many different things to consider. A couple of huge games, Hawthorn and Sydney, on Saturday night. That is going to be an absolute ripper. Okay. The winner of that game will play top four. They'll make the top four, and they'll play week one in a qualifying final. And the loser obviously will play, finish fifth or sixth. It's almost make or break, isn't it? Considering how important it is to finish top four.
Come on, Sydney.
Well, are you just really... Oh, yeah, that's right. I was going to say, you don't like Hawthorn, but of course, he's got the arse tattoo bet that we have.
Yeah.
Come on, Sydney.
Come on, Hawks. I really want Hawks to make a grandy now.
Yeah, me too.
What, so we can live stream it on the podcast or something?
Yeah, we're going to have to figure a creative way of you getting a tattoo live streamed. Especially because it's going to be your butt.
Is the biggest damage going to be getting the tattoo or having to fork out a K to get a tattoo of Cyril and Bruce McAvaney?
Yeah, mate. We'll be probably waiting a while for it because I'll have to save up for the tattoo, obviously.
This is a big bet you made, mate.
They're not going to make the grandy.
It could happen. I don't think so.
I'm a lot more worried than I was at the start of the season when I made the bet. Let's put it that way. They've done well.
Well, I think, there's a good chance they will finish fourth and play... They'll probably... I reckon they'll play Collingwood in a prelim as a big game, considering I think they beat Collingwood in the first game and then lost to them in the second game. Could be wrong.
Yeah, that's a tough game.
Yeah, Hawthorn and Collingwood, I think they split at one each this year when they played each other. That's a very big prelim final.
Yeah.
Obviously, West Coast need to beat Brisbane Lions at the Gabba this week to finish top 2. If they don't, that really does quite change the composition of the ladder. They could finish as low as 4th, and then week 1 against Richmond away, you'd probably say the chances of winning that are pretty slim. And GWS and Melbourne isn't as huge a game this week as I think we anticipated it was going to be, because I think most people tipped Melbourne to lose last week against West Coast and therefore be playing for finals. But it will be interesting because the winner of that essentially gets a home final. So Melbourne and GWS. So that's 3 games where there's a lot to play for. And Port will be hoping that Gold Coast can pull off a miracle down in Geelong, because otherwise they're toast.
Well, they beat Geelong earlier in the year, didn't they? Or was that...
Did they?
Or was that Sydney? Yeah, it was Sydney.
Gold Coast beat Sydney. Yeah. And Gold Coast have won 4 games.
Okay.
They won the first Q Clash. They beat Carlton. They beat Sydney.
Who else?
Did they beat Geelong? I don't think so.
Don't know. Yeah, I was thinking of Sydney.
I think they beat Geelong in the pre-season.
Okay.
JLT, yeah. But yeah, anyway, so there is a small chance as well that if West Coast lose this week, we're going to have 4 games. If West Coast lose and if Melbourne beat GWS, we're going to have 4 opening finals at the MCG.
Boys, I just want to go through the ladder right now. So as it's with the live ladder, I'm going to give you the matchups for week 1 of the finals.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me within 5 seconds who will win the game. Okay, so first,
is
Jesse.
this the current ladder?
Yeah. Richmond, Hawthorn.
Richmond.
West Coast, Collingwood.
It's going to be... That's
in Perth.
I'd probably give it to West Coast.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll go with you, Bushy.
I cannot believe that you just tipped West Coast when I didn't. That has got to be a true footy podcast first.
Right. Just because I think the club's arrogant doesn't mean I'm going to disparage them completely.
Sydney, Geelong in Sydney.
That is a real 50-50 one.
Yeah. Probably Sydney.
Geelong.
I'll go Geelong as well. GWS, Melbourne in Sydney.
GWS.
Yeah, Kelly's out though again, so
I'll pick an upset for that one.
Melbourne. I'm going to say Melbourne because Kelly's out again, isn't he?
Yeah, I think
he's been a real barometer for him the whole year.
What was his injury again?
I can't recall. I know he's out.
Yeah.
Don't recall.
I traded him in the dream team this week, and last week he scored 67, and just to replace Gaff. That was a real burn.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, I think we've done this one to death as the rain's picking up. It'll be interesting to see how loud that is on the podcast. But I think we'll come back here next week, talk about how round 23 went, and really get deep into the finals. I started regretting that line of phrasing halfway through it. But if you're still listening, thank you very much. Thank you if you are one of our 333 subscribers. If you're not, please hit that button, or Busher will moon the camera next episode.